Have you ever wondered how many truths you have believed your whole life without ever checking them? Things like drinking 8 glasses of water a day or humans only using 10% of their brain sound so familiar that nobody even questions them. They're like unwritten rules of life. Everyone believes them because everyone believes them. Not because they are correct, but because they are convenient, easy to remember, and sound very reasonable when you tell them to someone else. When something gets repeated long enough, it starts to look like the truth. In this story, I am not here to teach you anything or test your knowledge. I just want to tell you 31 stories that are so familiar they feel a little suspicious. And if while listening you feel slightly uncomfortable, do not worry. That is just the moment your brain realizes that it has believed a few wrong things too. Story 1. Humans do not use only 10% of their brain. Hollywood loves the idea that humans only use 10% of their brain and the other 90% is some locked warehouse of superpowers. All it takes is a weird accident or a secret pill, and suddenly the main character can read minds and speak in a very serious voice. Sounds amazing, but the truth is way less cinematic. Your brain does not have parts sitting around doing nothing while waiting their turn. Different areas are active all the time, just handling different jobs at different moments. If you were really only using 10% of your brain, you would not be able to drive a car, hold a conversation, or remember your own Wi-Fi password. Now imagine using 100% of your brain in everyday life. You would remember every conversation from 10 years ago, but still stand in front of the fridge staring into space, completely forgetting what you came to get. Not exactly a superpower. Story 2. You do not swallow spiders while sleeping. You have probably heard this story at the worst possible moment, usually at a camping trip or right before going to bed. On average, every person swallows 8 spiders a year while sleeping. Nobody knows where that number came from, but it is scary enough to make you lie perfectly still like a mummy all night. This is one of the classic internet hoaxes, the kind of information made just to see how many people will believe it and pass it along. The truth is, spiders want nothing to do with you. Humans are too big, too loud, and breathe out all kinds of smells that spiders find extremely suspicious. Your mouth, especially when you are asleep, is less a fun place to explore and more like an earthquake with a siren attached. If anyone in this relationship is panicking, it is the spider. They do not wait for you to fall asleep to attack. They wait for you to leave so they can have some peace. Story 3. Fortune cookies are not from China. Next time you eat at an American-style Chinese restaurant and crack open a fortune cookie to read a message about a big opportunity coming your way, remember that cookie did not come from China at all. It was born in the United States, specifically California, a place very talented at turning things that sound ancient into traditions. Fortune cookies showed up here in the early 20th century and slowly became glued to Chinese food in people's imagination. This myth survives because it is incredibly convenient. The cookie is served at the end of a Chinese meal, so everyone just assumes it is part of some ancient Chinese culture. On top of that, the little predictions sound mysterious, but harmless, perfect for reading and nodding, like, yeah, sure. The truth is, fortune cookies reflect American culture way more than anything else. It is basically a dessert with a sentence that sounds deep, but is vague enough to apply to literally everyone. Story 4. Einstein did not fail math. A lot of people grow up hearing this comforting line, do not worry. Einstein failed math in school too. It instantly makes you feel better, like even geniuses struggled with the same tests you did. The problem is that story is not true. In reality, Einstein was extremely good at math from a very young age. While many kids were still wrestling with basic division, he was already solving advanced problems that teachers barely dared to look at. This myth sticks around because it makes us feel better about ourselves. It turns failure into a hidden sign of genius, and honestly, who would not like that idea? Believing Einstein failed math makes forgetting a geometry formula suddenly feel hopeful. If Einstein ever heard this story, he would probably shake his head and go back to doing math. Not because he was offended, but because he never needed that kind of comfort to be smart. Story 5. Sushi does not mean raw fish. There is a familiar moment when a group of friends looks at a menu and someone immediately says, I do not eat sushi. I am scared of raw fish. Everyone at the table nods like sushi and raw fish are an inseparable couple. In reality, sushi does not mean raw fish at all. It refers to rice mixed with vinegar, and the topping can be many different things. Fish is just one option, not a requirement. This confusion comes from how sushi was introduced to the world, where slices of raw fish looked way more exotic and memorable than the rice underneath. So people forgot the main part, and sushi got labeled as food for the brave. Luckily, the California roll showed up to save anyone who was afraid of raw fish. It is basically a gentle reminder that you can enjoy sushi without passing any kind of mental challenge. Story 6. You do not need to drink 8 glasses of water a day. If you have ever worked in an American office, you have probably seen people carrying water bottles the size of survival gear like they are about to cross a desert. Their phone buzzes to remind them to drink water, then buzzes again, as if missing one sip would cause the body to shut down immediately. The number 8 sounds very official, but it did not come from some strict law of human survival. Your body gets water from many different sources, not just plain water in a glass. Coffee, tea, soup, fruit, and even bread all contribute to your daily hydration. Your body is smarter than you think and knows how to balance itself when needed. If you have ever forced yourself to drink all 8 glasses, you have probably also experienced running back and forth between your desk and the bathroom like you were training for a marathon. Turns out thirst is a much more reliable reminder than any number. Story 7. Sugar does not make kids hyper. Picture a classic American kid's birthday party: balloons, loud music, colorful cake, and parents standing in the corner with maximum alert mode. The moment a child runs past holding a cupcake, someone whispers, "Oh no, they had sugar." Sugar has long been treated like the main suspect that turns children into uncontrollable rockets. In reality, science is not on the side of this fear. Many studies have shown there is no clear evidence that sugar directly causes hyperactivity in children. What actually makes kids explode with energy is the environment, loud music, games, friends, and the excitement of being allowed to scream without getting told to stop. The funny part is, it is not just the kids who get hyper. The adults at the party talk louder, laugh more, and eat more cake than usual too. Maybe it is not the sugar, maybe everyone is just having fun. Story 8. The taste map on your tongue is wrong. If you ever studied biology in school, you probably remember that familiar diagram of a tongue divided into zones. Sweet at the tip, salty on the sides, bitter in the back. Looking at it, you would think the tongue operates under very strict territorial rules. Sweet here, bitter there, nobody crossing lines. The truth is, your tongue is way more relaxed than that. Taste receptors are spread all over, and almost every part of the tongue can sense multiple flavors. Sweet, salty, sour, and bitter are not standing in line waiting their turn. They all work together at the same time like a team. That wrong diagram was taught for years simply because it was easy to remember and easy to draw. Not because it was true, but because it was convenient. If the tongue really had strict borders, every meal would feel like a territorial dispute meeting. Luckily, it is not that complicated. Story 9. Lightning can strike the same place more than once. We grow up hearing this very comforting line that lightning never strikes the same place twice. It makes life feel a little less scary, like the universe follows fair rules. But in real life, lightning does not care about human sayings. If a place is tall enough and positioned just right, it can get struck again and again without hesitation. Tall buildings, radio towers, and large trees can be hit dozens of times a year, not because they are unlucky, but because they are perfect targets. This myth sounds reasonable because it helps us feel safer, like telling ourselves that risk will not repeat. In reality, lightning is more like a regular visitor. It knows exactly where to go, and if it has been there once, it will probably come back. So if you are standing somewhere high during a storm, do not rely on luck. Lightning does not read proverb books. Story 10. Bats are not blind. You have probably heard the phrase blind as a bat when someone is fumbling around looking for their keys in the dark. It sounds so familiar that we just assume bats must have terrible vision. In reality, if bats could hear that phrase, they would probably want to clear things up. Bats are not blind. Many species actually see quite well, they just happen to have an extra superpower. That superpower is echolocation, the ability to send out sounds and listen to the echoes to map their surroundings. Thanks to this, bats can fly in the dark, avoid obstacles, and catch insects with impressive accuracy. Echolocation does not replace vision, it simply adds another layer of information. In other words, bats can see and hear space at the same time. They are not blind, they are just really good in the dark. Calling someone blind as a bat is actually a bit unfair. If anything, a bat would probably look at you, shake its head, and think humans are way too confident. Story 11. Ostriches do not bury their heads in the sand. Whenever someone avoids an obvious problem, like not replying to emails for 3 weeks straight, someone will say, "Stop being an ostrich." The familiar image in our heads is an ostrich sticking its head into the sand, thinking that if it cannot see anything, the problem will magically disappear. It sounds logical in a very human way, but the truth is, ostriches are not that foolish. They do not bury their heads to hide. When they sense danger, ostriches usually lie flat on the ground, stretch their necks out, and try to blend into their surroundings. From far away, it looks like the head has disappeared, and that is how the myth was born. Now imagine using that strategy in real life, face down in a pillow hoping your bills will pay themselves. It only takes a few seconds to realize humans were not meant to be ostriches. At least ostriches have a good reason. Story 12. Penguins are not always loyal for life. Many couples have watched penguin documentaries and sighed in admiration. In the freezing ice, they stand next to each other, exchange stones, and look like the perfect symbol of lifelong love. So penguins get promoted to romantic icons that humans really want to believe in. But nature does not run like a movie. Some penguin species may stay together for one breeding season, not necessarily forever. If food is scarce, the nest is poorly built, or a partner does not do their part, they are perfectly willing to switch partners the next season. No drama, no heartbreak, just a practical survival decision. If there were such a thing as a penguin divorce court, the reasons would be very simple. Crooked nest stones not impressive enough, or just not a good match this year. Turns out even penguins do not sign a lifetime love contract. Story 13. Toilet water does not spin differently because of hemispheres. Have you ever traveled and heard someone confidently explain that in the southern hemisphere toilet water spins the opposite way? It is usually said with so much confidence, like they just discovered a secret of the universe. In reality, the toilet does not care where you are standing on Earth. The Coriolis effect does exist, but it only affects extremely large things like hurricanes and ocean currents, not the toilet bowl in a hotel bathroom. When it comes to toilets, things are much simpler. The direction the water spins depends on how the bowl is designed and how the water is released. If this myth were true, toilet companies would have to sell two different models, one for the northern hemisphere and one for the southern hemisphere, with a warning: please do not use the wrong one while traveling. Luckily, you do not need to worry about that. The only thing that really spins in a toilet is the argument about this myth. Story 14. Everest is not the tallest mountain in every way you measure it. The argument usually starts in a bar after the second beer. Someone confidently says Everest is the tallest mountain in the world, and the whole table nods like that was an easy one. It sounds reasonable because everyone has heard the name Everest 100 times. The problem is, tallest depends on where you start measuring. If you measure from sea level, Everest does win. But if you measure from the base of the mountain to the peak, the title actually belongs to Mauna Kea in Hawaii. Most of Mauna Kea sits underwater, so it looks modest, but its total height is actually greater than Everest. This myth survives because Everest has better branding. It shows up in textbooks, movies, and adventure stories. Mauna Kea just quietly does its thing under the ocean. In other words, Everest wins because of good PR, and Mauna Kea loses because it does not brag. Story 15. Most of the gold on Earth comes from outer space. At a wedding, there is always that moment when someone holds up a gold ring and proudly says it is a family heirloom. It sounds very formal, like the metal has been in the family for generations. What few people know is that its origin is much farther away, in fact, beyond Earth. Scientists believe that most of the gold we have today came from massive meteorite impacts billions of years ago. When the Earth was young, these meteorites brought heavy metals and spread them across the planet's surface. In other words, without those cosmic collisions, the gold would probably have sunk deep into the Earth's core, and you would have nothing to wear. So next time you look at gold jewelry, remember, you are not just wearing something pretty, you are wearing a piece of cosmic history. Sounds fancy, right? Story 16. Bulls do not hate the color red. In movies, bullfighting scenes are always dramatic. The matador waves a red cape, the bull goes wild, and suddenly red is blamed as the instigator of all the trouble. Everyone grows up believing that bulls personally hate red. In reality, bulls do not care. Bulls do not react to color, but to movement. Their vision does not distinguish red from green like humans, so the red cape is nothing special. What makes the bull charge is something waving continuously right in front of it, very close and very provocative. Change the cape to blue or white, and the result is the same. If you want to test it, just wave a cloth in front of your friends at a bar. When they chase you, it is not because of the color, it is because you just acted extremely annoying. Bulls are the same, they are only reacting to the action, not the color palette. Story 17. Owls do not turn their heads 360 degrees. Horror movies love the image of an owl rotating its head in a full circle to make things creepy. Because of that, many people believe owls can twist their necks 360 degrees like in the movies. In reality, that is not true. Owls can only turn their heads about 270 degrees, even though that number is still enough to make viewers uncomfortable. This ability comes from the special structure of an owl neck with more vertebrae than humans and a blood vessel system designed to avoid being cut off during extreme rotation. Thanks to that, owls can observe almost everything around them without turning their whole body. If you have ever thought about trying to twist your own neck to test this, please abandon that idea immediately. Going even slightly past your limit is enough for your body to start sending distress signals. Owls are not scary because they spin their heads in a full circle. They are scary because they can do things humans should never try to copy. Story 18. Chewing gum does not stay in your stomach for 7 years. Almost everyone grows up with this familiar warning that if you swallow gum, it will stay in your stomach for 7 years. Hearing that, you immediately chew slower with a serious face, like you just signed a long-term contract with your digestive system. This myth is scary enough that kids believe it instantly without asking any follow-up questions. The truth is, your body is not that naive. It is true that chewing gum is not fully digested, but that does not mean it settles in for the long term. Your digestive system handles it like many other things you do not absorb and simply moves it along and ends the story quickly. There is no 7-year schedule and no contract renewal. If gum really stayed that long, your stomach would have turned into a living museum displaying every flavor from your childhood. Luckily, your body does not work that way. It is much cleaner and far more practical. Story 19. Touching a baby bird does not make the parents abandon it. You are walking in a park and see a baby bird on the ground. Instantly, the familiar argument starts. One person wants to help, the other panics and says, "Do not touch it." The parents will abandon it because of the human smell. This line gets passed around with absolute confidence, like parent birds have a scent analysis system more advanced than trained dogs. In reality, many bird species do not rely on smell to recognize their chicks. Their sense of smell is quite limited, and what they care about much more is whether their chick is alive, making noise, and still within their territory. A little human scent is not enough to erase parental instinct. If parent birds get upset, it is usually not because of smell. They are annoyed because someone just touched the family real estate. In the bird world, that is the real issue. Story 20. Cracking your knuckles does not cause arthritis. Almost every family has an adult who has said this with a very serious tone. Do not crack your knuckles or you will get arthritis later. The moment that popping sound happens, warning looks appear like every crack just damaged your future. This myth has existed for so long, it is basically a family law. The truth is that popping sound is not bones hitting each other. It comes from small gas bubbles in the joint fluid collapsing when you stretch the joint. It sounds unpleasant, but it does not mean the joint is breaking down or being permanently damaged. The important thing is knowing the difference between something that is annoying and something that is actually dangerous. Cracking your knuckles is more likely to annoy people around you than harm you. In reality, your joints are fine. The thing most at risk of cracking is your friendships, especially if you do it while everyone is trying to focus. Story 21. Cutting an earthworm in half does not create 2 worms. Many people grow up doing backyard science experiments, and earthworms often become the familiar victims. There is a rumor that if you simply cut a worm in half, you will get 2 new ones, which sounds both convenient and magical. The truth is, biology is not that generous. Some worm species can regenerate, but that does not mean both halves survive. Usually only one part can recover, while the other cannot. Cutting a worm in half is not cloning, it is a pretty cruel ending for that worm. If earthworms really multiplied that easily, your backyard would have turned into a horror movie a long time ago. Luckily, that does not happen. So next time you see an earthworm, it is best to leave it alone. Biology is not a magic trick, and your backyard does not need extra drama. Story 22. Black holes are not cosmic vacuum cleaners. Science fiction movies love turning black holes into destruction machines that suck everything in like a space Pac-Man. Just hearing the words black hole makes people imagine the entire universe getting swallowed. In reality, it is far less dramatic. Black holes do have extremely strong gravity, but they do not wander around sucking up everything nearby. If the sun suddenly turned into a black hole, the planets would still orbit it the same way, just without light and heat. What would change is the light, not the orbit or the order of the universe. This myth exists because we like threats that are simple and easy to picture. But the universe does not play video games. It is complex, slow, and completely indifferent to us. Black holes are not stalking humans. They are just there, very powerful, very far away, and completely uninterested in your life. Story 23. Pure water conducts electricity poorly. The danger comes from impurities. We grow up with a very firm warning that water and electricity should never ever mix. It sounds reasonable enough that nobody wants to ask further because asking feels kind of dangerous. But the interesting truth is that pure water, the kind that is almost just H2O, actually conducts electricity very poorly. It is not the mastermind behind the electrical accidents we imagine. What really causes trouble is the minerals and impurities dissolved in water. Salt metals and all kinds of tiny ions in tap water are the real middlemen that help electricity move easily. In other words, electricity does not like clean water, it likes dirty water. If pure water were as dangerous as the myth suggests, laboratories would be covered in warning signs. But no, the problem lies with the water we use every day. So when you hear water and electricity do not mix, just add a small note in your head. Dirty water is the real main character in this story. Story 24. Bananas do not grow on woody trees. When you go to the supermarket, you see the familiar image of banana bunches hanging on what people call a banana tree. With its tall trunk and big leaves, everyone assumes it is a real tree. Very few people stop to question whether it is actually a woody tree because bananas are so familiar they feel beyond questioning. The truth is, bananas do not grow on woody trees. What we call the trunk is actually tightly wrapped layers of leaves, and the entire banana plant is classified as a herbaceous plant, more like grass than a tree. There is no hardwood, no growth rings, just leaves and more leaves. In other words, every time you eat a banana, you are not enjoying fruit from a tree, but from a giant piece of grass that is very confident about its size. It sounds strange, but it also makes sense. Bananas do not need to be a woody tree to become a breakfast staple. Story 25. Cleopatra lived closer to the time of the iPhone than to the pyramids. In a trivia game, this question usually makes the whole room go quiet for a few seconds. Did Cleopatra live closer to the time of the iPhone or closer to the time the pyramids were built? Most people instantly think the pyramids because in our minds, everything connected to ancient Egypt gets lumped together as very long ago. The truth is, the pyramids were built more than 2,000 years before Cleopatra was born. Meanwhile, the time gap between Cleopatra and the iPhone is actually much shorter. This timeline only feels wrong because our brains are terrible at imagining extremely long stretches of time. This myth exists because history is often told through symbols rather than precise timelines. Cleopatra became the face of all ancient Egypt, even though she arrived very late in that story. In other words, Cleopatra was not busy designing pyramids. She was busy dealing with royal drama, and problems complicated enough already. Story 26. Hair and nails do not keep growing after death. Urban legends love this creepy detail that after someone dies, their hair and fingernails keep growing. The image immediately brings to mind zombies stopping by a nail salon regularly, very committed to their appearance even after death. This myth spreads well because it is both creepy and easy to remember. The truth is much simpler and far less dramatic. After death, the body stops all biological activity, including hair and nail growth. What makes them look longer is that the skin loses moisture and shrinks, which exposes parts of the hair and nails that were already there. No growth is happening, it is just a visual illusion that tricks the eye. If hair and nails really kept growing, medicine would have a lot of very strange things to explain, but no, the body does not quietly keep working after clocking out. Zombies do not get manicures, the skin is just pulling back and human imagination is running a little too far. Story 27. Vikings did not wear horned helmets. Walk into any costume festival, and you will instantly see the familiar image of a Viking with a huge horned helmet. It looks powerful, fierce, and perfect for photos. The problem is that image is completely wrong. Real Vikings did not wear horned helmets in battle or while raiding. The horned helmet image appeared much later, mainly from 19th century operas and paintings where drama mattered more than historical accuracy. In real life, wearing a horned helmet would be heavy, inconvenient, and extremely dangerous. No warrior wants an enemy grabbing the horns and pulling them to the ground. If you are about to charge into a village, the last thing you want to worry about is your helmet horns getting stuck in a doorway. Vikings were famous for strategy and strength, not for head decoration skills. Horned helmets look great on stage, but in real life they are only good for costumes. Story 28. Napoleon was not short. The phrase Napoleon complex gets used whenever someone acts aggressive or tries too hard to prove themselves. After hearing it enough, people start believing Napoleon was famous more for his height than for his military conquests. In the shared imagination, he turns into a small man with a massive ego. The truth is very different. Napoleon was about 1.66 meters tall, which was quite normal and even slightly above average for French men at the time. The image of a short Napoleon came from differences in measurement systems and from enemy cartoons made by people very skilled at turning opponents into jokes. When a story is funny and easy to remember, it tends to outlive the truth. Napoleon conquered Europe with strategy and armies. Popular history conquered him with jokes and memes. And unfortunately, in many people's memories, memes have surprisingly strong staying power. Story 29. You do not lose most of your body heat through your head. When it is cold, you put on a thick hat and still start shivering, then someone immediately says 80% of your heat escapes through your head. That line sounds so familiar it feels like a basic law of physics, turning the hat into survival gear. The truth is, the body does not work that way. You lose heat through any body part that is exposed, whether it is your head, your hands, or your feet. The 80% number came from misunderstood experiments that were repeated because they were easy to remember. The body does not prioritize the head as a special heat leak compared to other parts. Wearing a hat is still important, but it does not turn you into a cold-proof human. If your hands and feet are freezing, keeping only your head warm will not solve the problem. The body loses heat as a connected system, not like a kettle leaking from one spot. To actually stay warm, you need to take care of your whole body, not just your head. Story 30. Humans do not explode in space. Space movies often show people getting sucked out of a ship and instantly exploding like a dramatic special effect. In real life, the human body does not react that theatrically. Space is not waiting for you to step outside, so it can make you blow up. The real physiological problem happens very fast, but not in the Hollywood way. Low pressure causes the body to lose oxygen almost immediately, and you would pass out within seconds because the brain is not getting oxygen. Skin and muscle tissue are elastic enough to keep everything intact, so there is no swelling and no explosion. That does not mean space is safe. Dying from lack of oxygen, extreme cold, and other biological reactions is already terrifying enough. The human body is simply not designed to live outside Earth. Hollywood adds drama for fun, while reality is much quieter and far more brutal. Story 31. Coffee does not dehydrate you. Mornings in an American office usually start with a cup of coffee and a familiar warning that coffee dehydrates you. It sounds reasonable because caffeine has a mild diuretic effect, so many people believe coffee does not count as hydration. The truth is, coffee is still mostly water. Yes, caffeine can make you use the bathroom a little more, but the effect is quite mild, especially for people who drink coffee regularly. The body is not easily fooled by one morning cup of coffee. It adapts quickly and maintains its fluid balance just fine. If coffee truly caused serious dehydration, American office workers would have turned into raisins a long time ago. In reality, millions of people survive every Monday thanks to coffee. This myth exists because it sounds logical, but science is rarely extreme. It usually lives in the gray area, where things are more realistic and much less scary. All of us have believed a few wrong things, and that is completely normal. Nobody is handed a constantly updated life manual. Believing something wrong does not make you less intelligent, it just proves that you are human. What is more concerning is when the truth has changed, but we stubbornly cling to old ideas just because they feel familiar. Science moves forward, the world changes, and sometimes our brains need a reminder that it is time for an update. If any story made you stop and think, wow, I used to believe that too, you are definitely not alone. Share the myth that shocked you the most or something you once confidently told other people. Do not worry, this is a friendly space. We are not judging. We are just having a light laugh together and leaving with at least one new thing in our heads.